I never thought I'd be the kind of man who sits in his own kitchen, staring at a cold cup of coffee, wondering if the woman he's loved for 22 years is lying straight to his face. We met in our 20s. I was a young mechanic with grease on my hands and a cheap smile. She was an office assistant at a law firm downtown. We built everything together, the house, the cars, the little vegetable garden out back. 2 kids. College paid for. The kind of life you think is unshakable. But last October, something changed. It started small. A sudden interest in working late. She said her company was preparing for a big audit. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But then, the way she dressed started changing. Nicer blouses. Perfume she hadn't worn in years. Her phone, always face down on the counter, or in her pocket when I walked into the room. That's not how we'd been. We were the kind of couple who left phones lying around. One Thursday, I decided to surprise her at work. I had just finished early with a customer's truck, thought I'd swing by, take her to lunch. When I walked into the lobby, the receptionist gave me a strange smile. Oh, she's out for lunch already. Out for lunch? With who? The woman at the desk glanced at her screen, then back at me. She left about 20 minutes ago, with Mike. Mike. I didn't know a Mike. I drove around for a while, didn't see her car anywhere. I told myself maybe it was a client. Maybe a coworker. But that night, when she came home, she had that same perfume. And a look in her eyes like she was walking on air. She never mentioned lunch. The first real crack came a week later. It was Saturday. She said she needed to catch up on some paperwork at the office. She left at 3 p.m. I was in the garage working on the neighbor's SUV when I realized she'd left her iPad charging on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. But as I walked past, the screen lit up. A message preview from M with a heart emoji. My stomach went tight. I shouldn't have done it, but I tapped the notification. It opened to a chat thread full of half-sentences, inside jokes, and one photo. A close-up of 2 glasses of wine, her hand holding one, and a man's hand holding the other. No face, but I could see the watch. Silver, with a black dial. It wasn't mine. The last message said, "Can't wait to see you tonight." She'd told me she'd be working late again. I didn't confront her. Not then. I needed more than a screenshot if I was going to tear her world apart. And I knew, if she felt safe, she'd make mistakes. The next day, I started watching her more closely. She'd keep her phone on her at all times, even in the bathroom. She started humming to herself when she thought she was alone. And she was suddenly happy. Not the everyday comfortable kind of happy we'd shared for decades. No. This was a nervous, sparkling happiness. The kind people have when they are hiding something exciting. 2 weeks later, I caught my first live glimpse. I'd finished work early and decided to take the long way home. Her car was parked at a little coffee shop on the edge of town, not her usual place. Through the big front window, I saw her. Leaning across the table. Laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. And there he was. Mid-40s. Tall. Clean haircut. Wearing that same silver watch. His hand was resting lightly on hers. I didn't walk in. I didn't want a scene, not yet. That night, she came home an hour later than usual. Said she stopped by the grocery store. I asked what she bought. She said milk and bread. There was no milk. No bread. Just a faint trace of his cologne clinging to her sweater. From that moment, I knew 2 things. 1, she was absolutely cheating. 2, I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to plan. Because if you've spent your whole life building something, you don't just watch someone burn it down. You make damn sure they get buried in the ashes. Over the next week, I began to map out her routine. I kept it quiet. No sudden changes in my behavior. I still kissed her goodnight. Still made coffee in the morning. But every time she left, I noted the time, the direction she drove, the excuse she gave. I didn't follow her every day, that would be obvious. But enough to spot patterns. Monday nights? Supposed yoga. Thursday lunches? Disappeared for an hour and a half. Saturdays? Always some kind of work emergency. I started talking to people, quietly. A friend at the DMV who could run a license plate. A buddy who worked IT security and owed me a favor. I got the name, M. Michael Graves. He worked in the same building as my wife, but for a different company on the 3rd floor. Divorced 5 years ago. Reputation for being charming. And a history of skirting HR policies about workplace relationships. By the time November rolled around, I had enough pieces to see the shape of it. He wasn't just some random fling. He was investing in her. Making her feel special. And she was eating it up like candy. Every smile she gave him was one she'd taken away from me. And still, I said nothing. Because the trap wasn't ready. Not yet. I knew that to destroy this, I couldn't just expose them. I had to hit them both where it hurt the most. For him? His job. His reputation. For her? The life we'd built, the security, the home, the friends who thought she was a saint. But for now, I played the part of the oblivious husband. I fixed her car when she said it was acting up. I brought home her favorite pie from the diner. And all the while, I was setting the first stones in a wall she'd never be able to climb out of. I didn't know the exact day it would happen, but I knew it was coming. And when it did, it would be the last time she'd ever underestimate me. I didn't sleep much after that night, the night I saw him in the coffee shop with her hand in his. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing beside me. Calm. Steady. Like she hadn't just spent the afternoon laughing with another man. My mind wasn't racing out of jealousy, it was calculating. The thing about betrayal is that if you react too soon, you give them control. But if you wait, if you let them believe they're safe, you can take everything from them. The next morning, I started my real investigation. Not the casual, "Where were you?" questions. No. This was quiet. Precise. I went into the garage, opened my old toolbox, and pulled out a small black case. Inside was a GPS tracker I'd bought years ago for a side job, a nervous client who thought his company truck was being borrowed after hours. It worked perfectly then, and it would work perfectly now. While she was in the shower, I stepped outside, popped the trunk of her car, and stuck the tracker under the lining near the spare tire. Out of sight. No sound. No light. By the time she got out of the bathroom, I was pouring coffee like nothing happened. That afternoon, while she was at work, I pulled up the tracking app on my phone. She wasn't at her office. She wasn't anywhere near it. She was parked at a small motel just off Route 8. The kind of place where no one uses their real name. She stayed for exactly an hour and 43 minutes. Then, she drove back to work like nothing happened. It would have been enough for most men. Enough to confront. Enough to explode. But I wasn't most men. The next step was eyes. Seeing is stronger than knowing. I called my buddy Chris, he's in the home security business. Told him I needed a set of wireless cameras for a project. No questions. He handed me 2 cameras the size of golf balls and a motion-activated recorder. That weekend, I made up an excuse to clean out the garage. While she was out grocery shopping, I set one camera in the corner facing the driveway, and another in the living room, high on the bookshelf, aimed right at the front door. It didn't take long. The following Thursday, she said she was going to yoga. Tracker showed she drove to the same motel. An hour later, the driveway camera caught her pulling in. She got out of the car, and so did he. Michael Graves. Same silver watch. Same smug face. They didn't come into the house, at least not then. She walked him back to his truck. But the way she smiled up at him. I hadn't seen that smile in years. That night, I downloaded the footage, watched it twice. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel rage. I felt focused. Like every piece was clicking into place. The next day, I decided to test something. I asked her if she wanted to have dinner out. She hesitated. Said she had a late meeting. I told her that was fine, that I might stop by the office and bring her a coffee. She froze for half a second. Then she smiled. That'd be nice. At 6:30, I drove downtown. Parked across the street from her building. Her car was there. Lights on in a few offices. I sat and watched, until she came out. Not alone. Michael was right behind her. They laughed about something, then she glanced over her shoulder like she was afraid of being seen. They walked 2 blocks, straight into a restaurant. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to catch them in a kiss or a hug. The point was to know exactly how far this went. That weekend, I made another move. I called in a favor from a guy I know in IT. I gave him Michael's name, company, and asked for anything he could find. It took less than 2 days. Michael had a company-issued laptop and a company-issued phone. Both monitored. And apparently, he wasn't shy about using them for personal conversations. Risky ones. My contact couldn't give me direct copies, that would have been illegal, but he could give me summaries. Enough to know there were dozens of messages between my wife's work email and his. Private jokes. Plans to meet. Even one message where she complained about me, saying I was distracted and boring lately. That one stung more than I expected. Still, I stayed calm. Because now, I had options. For him, I had workplace misconduct on a monitored device. For her, I had the beginnings of a reputation problem. All it would take was a few well-placed forwards, and both their careers could vanish overnight. But I wasn't ready to push the button. Not yet. Instead, I wanted to see how deep this ran. So, I created an opportunity. The following Friday, I told her I'd be driving out of town for a car show. I even packed a small bag, left it in the truck. Then I left at 3 p.m. In reality, I parked 3 streets away and waited. At 4:12, Michael's truck pulled up to our house. She came out wearing that same perfume, hair done, the look of someone about to spend the evening exactly how she wanted. They drove off together. Tracker showed they went straight to his apartment. Stayed there for hours. I waited until midnight before driving home. Her car was back. Lights off. She was asleep. I didn't touch her. I didn't say a word. But inside, something shifted. I wasn't just planning anymore. I was anticipating. By now, I knew his patterns too. He left work at 5:30 most nights. He always parked in the same spot. He used the same coffee shop every morning. His life was predictable. That was going to be his downfall. The more I learned, the more I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about arrogance. They thought they were untouchable. They thought I was too blind, too dull, too trusting to notice. That was their mistake. Because now, I had the truth in my hands. And soon, I was going to use it to burn their little fantasy world to the ground. By December, I had more than enough proof to ruin them both. But proof is only the beginning. To really break someone, you need a plan. And plans take patience. I started with Michael. On paper, he was clean, no arrests, no scandals. But his career, that was the pressure point. He worked in business development for a mid-sized financial company. I knew enough about corporate life to understand one thing: reputation is everything. And sleeping with a married woman who works in the same building? Using company devices to set up meetings? That's not just reckless, that's termination material. I called my friend Aaron, he's an employment lawyer. I didn't tell him it was my wife. I just said, hypothetical situation, a senior employee is having an affair with a coworker's spouse. Both use company email for personal contact. What happens if this comes out? He didn't hesitate. That's a code of conduct violation. Could be immediate dismissal. Especially if there's evidence. I smiled. Let's say, hypothetically, there's plenty of evidence. Next was his personal life. I found his ex-wife, Laura, on Facebook. No mutual friends. No connections. Just a quiet profile with pictures of her and 2 kids, teenagers. I sent her a simple message: "You don't know me. But I think it's important you know what Michael has been doing. If you want proof, I can give it to you." I didn't attach anything yet. Just let the hook sit there. Then, I moved to my wife's world. Her closest friends were 2 women she'd known since high school. Both of them adored me. I didn't want to drag them in too early, but I knew when the time came, their opinion of her would matter. So I made sure to stay in touch. Friendly texts. Casual invites. I wanted them to remember the man she was betraying. The most delicate part was keeping her completely unaware. I didn't change my routine. I still asked about her day. Still cooked Sunday breakfast. Still laughed at the same TV shows we'd always watched. If she suspected I knew, she might pull back from Michael. And I needed her to keep going. Needed her to feel safe. Needed her to dig the hole deeper. A week before Christmas, I got my first reply from Laura, Michael's ex. She said, "I've suspected for months he was seeing someone, but I didn't know who. If you have proof, I want it. Especially if it could help with custody issues." That was gold. If she used my evidence in court, his life would get even messier. I told her I'd get everything together and send it in the new year. That gave me time to collect more. Time to make it airtight. One evening, while my wife was in the shower, I synced her phone to my laptop. It was easier than I thought. Within minutes, I had a copy of her text messages, call logs, and calendar events. Buried between the everyday chatter and grocery reminders were dozens of messages to Michael. Some short. Some long. One from just 3 days earlier: "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it." Another: "I hate lying to him, but I can't give this up." Those words, they didn't hurt me anymore. They motivated me. On Christmas Eve, we hosted dinner for her family. She was radiant, smiling, laughing, pouring wine. And the whole time, I kept thinking, "You have no idea. You have no idea the storm that's coming for you." I waited until after the holidays to make my next move. January 2nd. Fresh year. Fresh destruction. I booked a meeting with an HR manager at Michael's company. I didn't tell my wife where I was going. I brought a neat little folder with printed screenshots, emails, messages, timestamp tracker logs. I didn't mention my marriage. I just said, I believe one of your senior employees is engaged in inappropriate conduct that violates your code of ethics. This is the evidence. What you do with it is your choice. The HR manager flipped through the folder slowly, her expression never changing. Then she said, "We'll review this immediately. And I'll be honest, if this is accurate, it's serious." That was step 1. Step 2 was Michael's ex. I sent her the full package, photos, messages, logs. She thanked me and said her lawyer would be very interested. I could almost hear the hammer starting to swing. Step 3 was planting the seed with my wife's friends. I didn't accuse her outright. I just hinted that we'd been going through a rough patch and that I think she's been spending a lot of time with a man from her office. They reacted exactly how I wanted: concern for me, confusion about her, and a subtle shift in loyalty. By mid-January, the trap was almost ready. But I still wanted one thing: undeniable, in-person confirmation. Not for HR. Not for Laura. For me. The moment I could watch their faces crumble. So I set it up. A Friday night. I told my wife I was heading to the city for a late client meeting. She nodded, barely looking up from her phone. By 7:15, tracker showed she was at the motel again. I drove out there. Parked where I could see the entrance without being seen. At 9:03, they walked out together. He had his arm around her. She looked up at him and laughed. They kissed. Not a quick kiss. A kiss that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't confront them. I didn't yell. I just sat there, watching, memorizing. Because the next time they saw me, it wouldn't be from across a parking lot. It would be face to face, and it would be the last time they'd smile at each other. The first sign came on a Wednesday morning. I was in the garage, tightening the belt on a customer's pickup, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I wiped my hands, answered. "Mister?" The voice was polite, formal. "This is Allison from Human Resources at Carson Financial. We'd like to thank you for coming in last week. The matter you brought to our attention is being handled. We can't disclose details, but please know it's being taken seriously." I kept my voice steady. "I appreciate the call." She hesitated for half a second, then said, "You may hear something soon." And hung up. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, tracker showed Michael never returned to work after lunch. By 4 p.m., I saw his truck parked in front of his apartment. At 6, my phone lit up again. This time, it was Laura, his ex-wife. Her voice was almost cheerful. "They fired him. No severance. He's in a complete panic. My lawyer says this is exactly what we needed for the custody hearing." I could hear her smile through the phone. "I don't know who you are to him, but I owe you." I told her, "Let's just say, we are both better off." That night, my wife was quieter than usual. She picked at her dinner, checked her phone more than she spoke. No smile. No humming. She went to bed early. I stayed up in the living room, pretending to watch TV, listening to her restless footsteps upstairs. By Friday, the ripples had spread. I heard her on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low, tense. "I don't understand. Why didn't you call me back? What do you mean they found the emails?" "No, I can't talk right now." She hung up hard enough to rattle the mug beside her. When she noticed me standing there, she forced a smile. "Work's just stressful." I nodded, said nothing. The following week, my next move unfolded. Remember those hints I dropped to her friends? Now I added weight. I called Denise, the louder, more opinionated one, and asked if she'd noticed my wife spending time with a man from her office. I made my voice low, hesitant, like I was struggling to say it. Denise gasped. Wait, are you serious? She hasn't said a word. I sighed. I didn't want to believe it. But things haven't been right. Her shock was perfect. I'll talk to her, she said. Exactly what I wanted. That Saturday night, the cracks widened. She went out with friends. I let her think I believed her. At 10:30, tracker showed her at Michael's apartment. At 11:15, she was driving home. When she walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop. She looked startled. You still up? Couldn't sleep, I said. Then I smiled. Did you have a good time? She blinked, too fast. Yeah, just drinks. I nodded slowly. With who? Just friends. Her voice wavered on that last word. I didn't push. I wanted her to wonder how much I knew. 2 days later, Denise called me. Okay, something's definitely going on. She avoided every question. She got defensive. I've never seen her like that. I made my voice heavy, tired. I was afraid of that. By midweek, I could see it in her posture. Shoulders tight. Eyes darting to her phone, then away. She was slipping. Thursday morning, I found her sitting in her car in the driveway, engine running, just staring at the steering wheel. I tapped on the window. She jumped. Rolled it down. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. She drove off without another word. That afternoon, I got a text from Laura, Michael's ex. It was a photo. Him, standing outside the courthouse, looking like he'd swallowed glass. Caption read, he knows it was you. He's furious. I typed back, good. Let him be. By now, my wife had no idea I was behind any of it. She thought Michael's firing was bad luck. She didn't realize the friends she trusted were already doubting her. She didn't know his ex was armed with every ugly detail. And then, I set the stage for the final act. The following Monday, I told her I'd be driving to a supplier 3 hours away, wouldn't be home until late. She nodded without looking up from her phone. At 7 p.m., tracker showed her at Michael's place again. At 8:45, they left together in his truck. They drove to a quiet bar on the edge of town. I parked 2 blocks away, walked in the side entrance. They were in a booth. His arm draped over the backrest. She was leaning in close, talking fast. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see her eyes. Nervous. Afraid. He looked angry. I didn't approach. I just stood at the bar long enough for her to notice me. It took less than a minute. Her gaze flicked up, froze. The color drained from her face. She said something to him, he turned, saw me. I smiled. Lifted my glass. And walked out. I didn't need a scene. That single moment, the realization that I'd seen them together, was enough to light the fuse. That night, she came home after midnight. I was in bed, pretending to sleep. She stood in the doorway for a long moment. I could feel her watching me. Then she walked away. The trap was set. All I had to do now was close it. The morning after that bar, she moved through the house like a ghost. No humming. No small talk. Just quiet, and attention so heavy it made the air feel thick. She didn't mention seeing me. And I didn't bring it up. That was the beauty of it, The silence would eat at her far more than any accusation could. By Wednesday, I could tell Michael wasn't answering her calls. Her phone would light up with unanswered texts. I saw the frustration in her jaw, the way she gripped the phone tighter every time she checked it. I knew why. Laura, his ex, had told me the custody case was moving faster now that he'd been fired. He was scrambling to save face. The last thing he needed was my wife adding fuel to the fire. But she didn't see that. She still thought she was part of his life. She still thought she could fix it. And that's when I decided it was time. I picked Friday. Not because of any special date, but because Friday meant the office was full. Phones ringing. People moving in and out of meetings. The perfect audience. That morning, I left for work like nothing was wrong. But instead of going to the shop, I parked outside her building. Waited. At 9:15, she arrived. Blue blouse. Black skirt. Hair perfect. She walked inside, not seeing me. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a reply from the email I'd sent the night before. An email with a single attachment, a tidy PDF of screenshots, GPS logs, and timestamps. The reply was from the company's internal compliance office. We will be addressing this immediately. You may want to be present. I smiled. Right on schedule. At 10:05, a small group of people emerged from the elevator on the third floor. Two of them I recognized from the HR meeting weeks ago. One of them walked straight to my wife's desk. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the body language. She froze. Looked from one face to the other. Then, slowly, she got up and followed them. 5 minutes later, Michael appeared from the far end of the hall. He didn't look at her. Didn't even glance her way. He walked straight to another office, and the door shut behind him. I knew what that meant. Separate interrogations. No chance to get stories straight. I didn't need to see the rest. I left the building, and headed for the next part of my plan. At 11:30, I was sitting at our kitchen table. Her two best friends, Denise and Carla, were across from me. I'd asked them to stop by, told them there was something they needed to know before they heard it from someone else. I didn't rant. I didn't show anger. I just laid it out. The photos. The logs. The truth. Denise's hand flew to her mouth. Carla just stared. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Denise said, "I can't believe she did this." Carla shook her head. She lied to us. All this time. That was exactly the reaction I wanted. The first cracks in her social circle. By the time she came to them for sympathy, they'd already chosen a side. Mine. At 1:15 p.m., my phone lit up again. Her number. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was tight. "We need to talk." I kept mine calm. "About what?" "Don't do this, please. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. Then I hung up. 15 minutes later, she walked through the front door. Her face was pale. Her hands shaking. "They fired me," she said. The words caught in her throat. They said they had proof. Emails. Logs. Who gave them that? I met her eyes. I did. She blinked. Once. Twice. Like she couldn't quite process the words. "You." Her voice was almost a whisper. I nodded. Every late night. Every lunch. Every lie. I knew. And I made sure you both paid for it. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. You burned our marriage to the ground, I said. So I made sure you'd never rebuild it on my back. She stepped toward me. I still love you. I laughed once. Sharp. Cold. No. You loved having me as your safety net. That's gone now. I walked past her, into the hallway. Picked up the small suitcase I'd packed the night before. Her eyes followed me, wide, unblinking. There's a storage unit with the rest of your things, I said. The locks here are changed. You'll get the keys, once you've picked everything up. She didn't move. Didn't speak. I opened the front door, stepped outside. And didn't look back. That night, I stayed at a buddy's place. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a beer, and turned on the game. But in my mind, I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen. Her face, when she realized it was me who'd pulled every string. That I'd been 10 steps ahead the whole time. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly. It was finality. The end of something that had been rotting for years. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without wondering where she was. The days that followed were strangely quiet. No arguments. No late-night calls. No texts from her demanding explanations. It was as if she didn't know what to say. Or maybe she finally understood there was nothing left to salvage. I went back to work like nothing had happened. Fixed engines. Changed oil. Talked to customers about the weather. It was almost peaceful. But I still kept an eye on things. Not because I wanted her back. Because I wanted to see what happened when the dust settled. The first update came from Laura, Michael's ex-wife. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Her tone was almost casual. You'll want to hear this, she said. The judge granted me primary custody. Michael doesn't get weekends anymore. Just supervised visits twice a month. I leaned back in my chair. That's fast. She laughed softly. Your evidence was bulletproof. The emails, the motel visits, it painted a very clear picture. My lawyer didn't even have to work that hard. I could imagine Michael hearing that verdict. The look on his face. The weight of knowing his own choices had boxed him in. Laura continued, oh, and he had to sell his truck. Can't afford the payments now that he's unemployed. Her voice turned sharper. You did me a favor. A big one. I told her she didn't owe me anything. But the truth was, hearing it all fall apart for him, felt good. My wife, or I guess I should say, my ex-wife-to-be, wasn't doing much better. Denise texted me one evening. She's been calling everyone. Crying. Trying to explain. But no one's buying it. Apparently, the story had spread faster than she could control. People in her office talked. Neighbors whispered. Even her own family was keeping their distance. She tried reaching out to a few friends for sympathy. Only to realize they'd already heard my side. They didn't want to choose between us. But the more they learned, the easier that choice became. By the end of the month, she was living in a small apartment near the freeway. No yard. No garden. Just a view of the parking lot. One night, I stopped at the old diner in town for dinner. The same place where we'd once gone every Friday. Halfway through my burger, I heard the door open, and there she was. She didn't see me at first. She looked thinner. Tired. Older than the woman I'd left just weeks ago. When she finally spotted me, her steps faltered. For a second, I thought she might come over. But she didn't. She turned away, ordered her food to go, and left without saying a word. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel triumph. Just distance. Like she was a stranger I'd once known. Michael, on the other hand, wasn't invisible. 2 weeks later, I saw him outside the grocery store. He was carrying a single paper bag. Looked thinner too. His clothes, less sharp than before. He noticed me. Stopped. Stared. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he shook his head, almost like he was talking to himself, and walked away. No words. No confrontation. Just the quiet acknowledgement that I'd been the one to pull the rug out from under him. By spring, the divorce paperwork was finalized. No alimony, she'd forfeited that in exchange for keeping her retirement account. The house stayed mine. Her name was gone from the deed. I packed the last of her belongings into a small storage unit. Left the key in an envelope at her apartment door. Didn't wait for thanks. Didn't expect it. And then, life moved on. I started going out again. Dinner with friends. Long drives on weekends. One Saturday at the farmer's market. I met someone new. Her name's Emily. She works at a local bakery. She's nothing like my ex, and I mean that in every possible good way. We took it slow. Coffee dates. Walks in the park. Conversations that didn't feel like battles. I didn't tell her the whole story at first. But when I did, she just listened. No judgment. No pity. She said, "Sounds like you went through hell. But you didn't let it destroy you." And maybe, that's the point. It didn't destroy me. It didn't break me. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how it all unfolded. The lies. The investigation. The quiet moves behind the scenes. People imagine revenge as loud, messy, full of screaming. But the truth is, the most effective revenge is calm. Silent. Precise. You let them build their little world on lies. And then, you take away every brick. One by one. Until they are left standing in the rubble. Wondering when it all started to fall apart. I haven't spoken to her in months now. Haven't seen Michael either. From what I hear, he's working a sales job for half the pay. She's still renting that same apartment. And me? I'm rebuilding. Not just my life, but myself. Because in the end, the sweetest part of the whole thing wasn't watching them fall. It was knowing they'll never climb back to where they were. Not together. Not apart. It's been a year now. A full year since the day I walked out of my own front door. And left her standing there in silence. I won't lie. The first few weeks were strange. You don't spend decades with someone and just erase them from your mind overnight. But time has a way of sanding down the edges. The memories that once burned now just feel distant. Like they belong to someone else's life. Every so often, I hear pieces of her story through the grapevine. A neighbor will mention seeing her at the supermarket. Or Denise will casually tell me she's still in that same small apartment. I've never asked for details. Not because I care about protecting her, but because I don't need to know every chapter of her downfall. I've already read the ending. Michael, well, the last I heard, he's selling cars at a dealership 2 towns over. No more polished suit and tie. No more corner office. Just a man trying to talk strangers into buying used sedans. Sometimes, when I pass through that town, I wonder if I should stop in. Walk onto the lot. See if he recognizes me. But then I think, no. That would give him too much. Better to let him wonder if I ever think about him at all. As for me, life is quieter now. And I've realized something. Quiet is underrated. There's no checking my phone for late-night texts that never come. No pretending not to notice her slipping away piece by piece. No hollow conversations at the dinner table. Emily, the woman I met at the farmer's market, is still in my life. It's not some whirlwind romance. It's steady. Real. She laughs at my bad jokes. And when she says she'll be somewhere, she's there. Every time. I think back to the man I was before all this. The man who would have forgiven too quickly. Who might have looked past the lies just to keep the peace. That man is gone. What's left is someone who understands his own worth. Someone who knows that loyalty isn't something you beg for. It's something you either have, or you don't. People ask me sometimes, was it worth it? The months of planning. The quiet surveillance. The calculated strike. And my answer is always the same. Yes. Because it wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming control over my own life. If I'd confronted her the first time I had a hunch, she might have denied it. Might have twisted it around. Made me question myself. But by waiting, by letting her believe she was safe, I turned every lie she told into another nail in her own coffin. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about choosing the perfect moment. And making sure they understand, without a shadow of a doubt, that you were always in control. The best part? When they realize you didn't just react. You designed it. Step by step. That's a weight they carry for the rest of their lives. Every time they look back, they'll remember how easily you took it all away. I don't wake up angry anymore. I don't replay old arguments in my head. And I don't wish things had turned out differently. What happened, happened. And in the end, I came out of it lighter. Freer. Better. If you're listening to this, and you're where I was a year ago, let me tell you something. Don't rush. Don't beg. Don't let them see you coming. Keep your head. Collect your proof. And when the time is right, make your move so clean, so sharp, that they never see it until it's over. And then, walk away. Because the real victory isn't just in watching them lose. It's in building something new. While they're still standing in the ruins of what they destroyed. I don't know where she'll be in another year. I don't know if Michael will still be selling cars. Or if they'll even be in touch. And honestly, I don't care. The chapter's closed. The story's finished. And the man telling it now isn't the same one who lived it. He's stronger. Wiser. And he knows. Sometimes the sweetest sound in the world isn't an apology. It's silence.